I fucking hate working the night shift. The silence, the isolation, it's the perfect setup for something to go horribly wrong. And last night? Yeah. Last night, I realized just how wrong it can get. I work as a security guard at a small office building. Nothing fancy, just a 3-story building with a few businesses inside. My job: walk the floors, check the cameras, and make sure no one's trying to break in. Easy, right? That's what I thought too. Last night started like any other. I got to work at 11 p.m., did my first round, and settled into the security office to watch the monitors. The place was empty, just the way I liked it. But around 1 a.m., shit started getting weird. The first thing I noticed was movement on the second floor camera. A shadow, just at the edge of the frame, slipping around the corner of the hallway. My stomach dropped. No one was supposed to be here. No cleaners, no late-night workers, just me. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way upstairs. The hallway was dim, just the emergency lights casting long shadows against the walls. "Hello," I called out, even though I fucking knew better. No answer. I checked every office, every corner. Nothing. Maybe I was seeing things. Maybe I was just tired. But as I turned to head back downstairs, I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from behind me. I spun around, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. Who's there? Nothing. But the footsteps didn't stop. They moved past me. Not behind me, past me. Like someone was walking right fucking next to me. Just out of my sight. My entire body locked up, every hair on my arm standing on end. It felt like something was watching me. I forced myself to move, rushing back downstairs, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Back in the security room, I locked the door and checked the cameras again. And that's when I saw it. The camera on the second floor pointed right at the hallway I had just been in. The hallway wasn't empty. A man stood there, motionless. His head tilted back slightly, his mouth open too wide, like his jaw had unhinged. His eyes, black fucking voids, just staring straight at the camera. At me. I couldn't breathe. He hadn't been there when I was up there. There was no way. Then, without moving his mouth, I heard his voice. "You saw me!" I flinched so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. The voice wasn't from the camera. It was inside the fucking room. I turned, expecting to see him standing behind me. But the room was empty. I wasn't imagining this. This wasn't a trick of the light or some fucked up hallucination from lack of sleep. This was real. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police. But as soon as I looked at the screen, I froze. A live video feed was playing. It was me, sitting in the security office, staring at my phone. But behind me, in the video, the man was there, standing right fucking behind me, his head tilting to the side like he was studying me. I whipped around. Nothing. My phone screen went black. The monitors went black. The lights cut out. The only sound was breathing. Deep, slow breathing. Right next to my fucking ear. I ran. I don't even remember getting to my car. I don't remember unlocking the doors or turning the key. All I know is that I didn't stop driving until I was home, shaking so hard I could barely get my keys in the lock. I quit my job this morning. No fucking way am I going back there. But the worst part? I checked my phone when I woke up. There was a new video in my gallery. It was me, sleeping. And in the corner of the frame, just barely visible in the darkness, that same fucking man. I worked the graveyard shift at the Holloway Hotel, midnight to 8 a.m. It was a small, aging hotel on the outskirts of town, barely hanging on with only a handful of guests at any given time. That night, we were nearly empty. 3 guests, scattered across different floors. One in room 102, another in room 204, and the third in room 306. But here's the thing. Room 306 had been vacant for days. The last guest had checked out 3 days ago, and no one had booked it since. I was just sitting at the front desk, watching the clock tick slowly, the night dragging on. At 2:47 a.m., the phone rang, breaking the silence. Holloway Hotel, front desk, I answered, half expecting a late-night request for extra towels or something equally mundane. But instead, there was nothing. Just silence. Then came a whisper, raspy and weak, as if someone was struggling to speak. "There's someone in my room." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I tried to shake off the creeping dread. "Which room?" 306, the voice said, barely audible. I felt my stomach twist. I checked the system. No reservations for 306. It had been empty for days. My pulse quickened. "Hello? Is someone there?" I asked, but there was only static on the line. The connection dropped. Now, I was shaken. But it could have been a prank or a wrong number, right? I grabbed the master key and started walking to the 3rd floor, trying to convince myself that nothing was wrong. But the moment I stepped off the elevator, something was off. The hallway was too quiet. The lights above me flickered erratically, casting long, distorted shadows along the walls. My heart was pounding as I approached room 306. Outside the door, I froze. There was water on the carpet. Not just a little, it was soaked. The water seemed fresh, as though someone had been standing there for a long time, dripping water onto the floor. My breath caught in my throat, but I pushed forward, forcing my legs to move. I knocked. "Hotel security. Is anyone inside?" Silence. I tried the master key, and the lock clicked open. The door creaked as I pushed it inward. The air hit me like a wall. It was freezing cold. I could see my breath fogging in front of me as I stepped inside. The room was dark, except for the dim light coming from the hallway. But something about it felt wrong. It was too still, too quiet. I looked around. The bed was neatly made, the curtains tightly drawn. But then I saw the floor. There were footprints. Wet, muddy footprints, leading from the bathroom to the phone on the nightstand. My chest tightened, and I felt a surge of panic. My legs felt heavy, but I forced myself to move toward the bathroom. The door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to see into the mirror. And there, in the mirror, she was there. A woman, her hair wet, dripping down in matted strands, her skin pale and almost sickly looking. Her eyes were dark, hollow, empty, staring directly at me. I froze. She didn't move, didn't make a sound. She just stood there, watching me from the reflection. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. The room was empty. My heart was racing. I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples. There was no way I had just seen that. Maybe it was the lack of sleep. Maybe it was just a trick of the light. But then I looked at the floor again, and the wet footprints were still there, leading from the bathroom to the phone. I backed away slowly, my mind trying to make sense of what I had seen. I couldn't, but I had to check the bathroom. I crept toward the door, which was still cracked open. My hand shook as I pushed it all the way open. The bathroom was completely normal, nothing out of place. But then I saw it. The sink was running, dripping one drop at a time into the basin. I stood there, frozen, as I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, slow, deliberate footsteps behind me, echoing in the room. My heart felt like it was going to explode in my chest. I didn't want to turn around, but my body moved before my mind could stop it. When I turned, I saw her again. The woman. But this time, she wasn't in the mirror. She was standing right in front of me, her wet hands outstretched, her face twisted in a sickening grin. Her eyes, empty and cold, stared right through me. I screamed. It wasn't a shout. It was a scream, primal and terrified. My legs gave out beneath me, but I didn't care. I scrambled backward, pushing myself away from her. But she didn't move. She just stood there, watching, waiting. I don't remember how I made it out of the room. I ran, bolted down the stairs and out of the hotel without a second thought. I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping for air. At the front desk, I checked the guest records, trying to make sense of what had just happened. That's when I found it. The name on the log for room 306 was Margaret Holloway. I dug deeper. Margaret Holloway was the wife of the hotel's original owner. She had died years ago, drowned in room 306. I quit that night. I've worked the night shift at the Foxview Motel for years. It's a quiet place, usually. Most guests are just passing through, looking for a cheap room to rest before getting back on the road. Nothing ever happens during my shift. It's dull, mostly. But then there was him. It was just another routine night. Around 1 a.m., the lobby was empty. The only sound was the hum of the old refrigerator in the corner. I was sitting behind the desk, flipping through a magazine, when the door opened with a soft chime. I looked up, expecting the usual. Another weary traveler checking in. But this guy, he was different. He stepped inside without a word. His clothes were worn, almost ragged, like he had been traveling for days. His face was gaunt, pale, like he hadn't seen sunlight in ages. His eyes, though, those eyes, they were wide, too wide, as if he had been awake for days, without sleep. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He didn't answer. Instead, he handed me a crumpled piece of paper with a room number written on it. 207. I glanced at the paper and then back at him. "Sure, room 207, I said, reaching for the key. "Anything else?" He just shook his head. His eyes never left mine as I handed him the key. "All right, have a good night," I said, trying to push the unease building in my chest aside. He didn't respond, just turned and walked out of the lobby, heading toward the stairs. I didn't think much of it at the time. People come and go, and I've seen stranger things, but something about him stuck with me. The way he moved, the way his eyes seemed to follow everything around him, as if he were on edge, constantly watching. I went back to my magazine, but the feeling didn't go away. I tried to shake it off. The night dragged on. The silence in the lobby almost suffocating. At 3 a.m., I decided to take a walk down the hallway. I needed to stretch my legs, maybe grab a coffee from the break room. As I passed room 207, I paused. The door was cracked open. Not wide, just enough that I could see a sliver of the dim light from inside the room. I could hear something. A soft, scratching sound. It was faint at first, like nails on fabric. My heart started racing, and against my better judgment, I pushed the door open. What I saw in that room sent a chill down my spine. The man was standing by the window, facing the wall. His back was to me, but he wasn't looking outside. He was staring at the wall, his eyes wide, unblinking. His hands were pressed against the wall, and he was scratching at it with his nails. Scratch. 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 The sound echoed in the otherwise silent room. His nails were bleeding, but he didn't seem to notice. He just kept going, relentless, as though he was trying to carve something into the wall. "Hey!" I called out, trying to sound firm, but my voice was shaky. "Are you okay?" He didn't respond, just kept scratching. I stepped into the room, my feet barely making a sound on the carpet. "Sir, you need to stop that," I said, but I could feel my own voice trembling now. Suddenly he stopped. dead still. And then he turned slowly, so slowly that I could feel my pulse racing faster. He looked at me. His eyes were empty, hollow. No life in them. Just wide, vacant spaces. His lips stretched into a twisted smile, but there was something off about it. It wasn't a normal smile. It was too sharp, like it didn't belong on his face. "Do you hear it?" he whispered, his voice almost lost in the room. "Hear what?" I asked, stepping back, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. "The scratching," he said, his voice barely audible. "Can't you hear it? They're trying to get out. They're..." He was cut off by a loud, deafening bang from behind the wall. I jumped back, heart pounding in my chest. He didn't flinch. He just stood there, staring at me with that smile. "The wall is trying to break free," he whispered. "It's only a matter of time." I didn't wait for another word. I turned and ran out of the room, slamming the door behind me. I didn't even look back. I rushed to the front desk, my hands shaking as I tried to steady myself. What the hell had just happened? Was he crazy? I sat down behind the desk, trying to breathe, trying to calm my racing heart. It took a few minutes, but I finally managed to get a grip on myself. I was about to call the police when I heard it. A soft, steady, scratching noise. It was coming from the wall. I froze, my blood running cold. The noise was unmistakable, exactly like the sound I had heard in room 207. But it was coming from inside the building, echoing down the hallway. Scratch. 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 I didn't go back to check. I didn't have to. The next morning, I went to room 207 to see what had happened. The door was wide open. The room was empty. And there, on the wall, were deep, jagged scratch marks. But the strangest thing? They were all facing out.